On today's show, what players from this year's Nets team will be back next season? What is driving the team's recent improvement? And how will Cam Thomas's return impact the rotation? I'll answer all those fan questions and more right now.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to Locked On Nets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now the number one sports podcast network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I'm Erik Slater, Brooklyn Nets beat reporter for ClutchPoints.com. Thank you for making me your first listen of the day. The show is 100% free on all those great platforms. And on today's episode, it's Fan Take Friday. I took questions from Nets fans on a wide range of subjects, as I do each week. So getting right into it, first question. We're about 15 games in. Which players on the Nets team, besides the rookies, do you see at this moment as players that will also be here next year, especially with the chance of the Nets perceivably trying to be competitive next year? That is from Tanny G 2001. And this is an interesting question because the Nets were seen prior to this season. They were obviously a blank canvas. They made the switch. They went into the rebuild. They traded Mikal Bridges, got their picks back. But other than that, there really wasn't a single player on the team who you could point to and say, like, these are going to be core building blocks moving forward. They began to lay that foundation this season, selecting 5 rookie first-round picks, NBA records. So if you're talking about players who are definitely going to be back next year, obviously the rookies. Outside of that, there really aren't too many. Like, I can't say any for, definitely going to be back. The ones I'm really confident are going to be back, I'd really say only 2. I'd say Noah Clowney. I'm very confident that he's going to be back next year. He's having a pretty encouraging, resurgence after a rough start to the season, and he looks good as of late. The Nets are still deciding what they have with him. They picked up his team option for next season. I think he'll be back. I don't see him going anywhere. Other than that, Terrence Mann, that was really like one of the guys that I came away with, and not even because like he's a part of the Nets' future plans or whatever. He's just not really playing that well, and I don't see the Nets being able to get off that contract without attaching an asset to it, which there really is no reason for them to do. I mean, Terrence is under contract for $31 million over the next 2 seasons. So if the Nets are going to get off that deal, maybe next season, probably when he's an expiring. I just don't see it happening now or this offseason. So in terms of the tiers of these players, the definitely back guys, I have the rookies, and then very confident that they're going to be back. I have Noah Clowney and Terrence Mann. Outside of that, I have a few other tiers that I put together. I'd say trade candidates maybe back. Those are guys that I would say Nick Claxton and Day'Ron Sharpe, the Nets centers. I think that the Nets are getting to a position where they might have to make a decision between one of these two, especially after drafting Danny Wolf. Claxton fits the timeline less so, but he's playing really well right now. How do the Nets view Day'Ron Sharpe of those guys? I could see them making a decision on which one of those guys they want to roll with and how Danny Wolf fits into that equation. So those are guys who I could definitely see being back. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they were both back, but they are both definitely trade candidates also. The other guys that I would say are on the roster bubble or roster decisions, I don't see them as trade candidates, but they could be cut or not brought back next season. Tyrese Martin and Zaire Williams, those are 2 guys I had. I mean, Tyrese, that's a really high on what he's done, last season into this offseason, into the beginning of this year. He's had some good moments. He's actually the best player in terms of net rating swing on the Nets this year by a large margin. And he's done some good things. So I think the Nets like what they've seen from him. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's back, but definitely not a foregone conclusion. And same thing with Zaire Williams. Has shown promise since they got him in the salary dump, but he has that $6.2 million team option next season. And, he's not having a great start to the season. Depending on how the Nets view him, they could look to move on from him and decline that team option and just add to their cap space that they have next summer. They could also bring him back and see what they have for one more year, with him being on an expiring contract next season if they pick up that option. So those are roster bubble guys. Next year, guys, I'm expecting a trade. I would say Cam Thomas is number 1 on this list. I expect Cam Thomas to be traded. I've said this. That's not necessarily insider info or me reporting anything sourced. It's just me reading the tea leaves and the logical outcome of this. I'm going to get more into this on a question in a few minutes here, but I don't see Cam Thomas being here past this season. And because of that, it really makes sense for the Nets to move on from him during this season. The next guy I'd say in this expecting a trade category is Michael Porter Jr. And I'm not as confident in this one. It doesn't mean that, he's definitely going to get traded. I did a podcast about this yesterday, and Michael Porter Jr.'s improved play, which I do think makes it plausible for him to be traded this season. But when the Nets got MPJ, I think that there was a consensus around the league that they were going to try to look to flip him probably this coming summer into next season when he is an expiring contract. So could the Nets move forward with them? Could they like him as a piece moving forward? Sure. He's showing really good things in Jordi Fernandez's system to begin the year, but he is a little bit older. And, the Nets are moving forward in their rebuild. I wouldn't at all be surprised if they want to just get off of that deal and kind of have clean books after next season, have their books clean, build forward with their draft picks this year, whoever they get in the draft next year, and go forward. So he's another guy who I see as a trade candidate. And I wouldn't be shocked if he's back next season, but I also wouldn't be shocked if he got traded. And then the last two guys, I'd be surprised if they're back. Haywood Highsmith, I think, I'm going to also talk about him, but I think that him coming back, I don't really see that as the most likely outcome. And then Jalen Wilson, who has been with the Nets since they took him in the second round of that 2023 draft, but has had his moments, but really isn't showing anything to where like he's going to be a long-term piece for them. So that's what I'd see. So in a long-winded response to your question, I would say the guys I definitely see being back, Noah Clowney, Terrence Mann, and the rookies. And then outside of that, Day'Ron Sharpe, Nick Claxton, those guys definitely could be back, but are trade candidates. And then Cam Thomas, MPJ, more likely trade candidates. And then Tyrese Martin, Zaire Williams, roster bubble. And then Haywood Highsmith, Jalen Wilson, I do not expect to be back. Next question. What is the efficiency rating for Nick Claxton, Noah Clowney, and MPJ since moving Noah into the starting lineup? With the naked eye, the Powell/Martin backcourt pairing seems to mesh better than the Dioman/Mann pairing. Do you agree? That's from Roy B. Realtor. And yes, the Nets have moved Noah Clowney, and they made a pretty, intentional shift going to a bigger front court. They did it for the first time in that Pacers game, the one they won, where they moved Noah into the starting lineup, and they have the new front line of Michael Porter Jr., Noah Clowney, and Nick Claxton. I think that was a reaction to the Nets being so bad defensively through their first 7 games. One of the worst defenses in NBA history and the worst defense in Nets history, at least through 4 games. They gave up 522 points. So going to a little bit of a bigger front line, that made sense. And if you're talking about that trio in the starting lineup, if you look at just their minutes together, they have a -8 net rating, which is, obviously really bad, but it's better than like the Nets net rating as a whole. So, those guys together, I think they have shown some promise. Nets have played better basketball of late since going to that new front line in the starting lineup. But I would say that the Nets playing better basketball over their last 8 games with that new starting lineup. I would say that, Noah has played a role in that. He's played really well. But I don't think the biggest role. I'd say that's more about Cam Thomas's absence to me, because they moved Noah into the starting lineup during that Pacers game, and that was the same game that Cam got hurt in like the first 4 minutes of that game and was out and has been sidelined since. And that completely reconfigured this Nets team in the way that they play, much more so than Noah Clowney moving into the starting lineup when he was already playing good minutes with the second unit, or a bunch of minutes with the second unit. So Cam Thomas's absence has been the biggest difference between, the first 7 games and the last 8 games. Like, that has been the difference. And you look at it like, this just has been the case throughout Cam Thomas's career. Like, the Nets have been better the overwhelming majority of the time when he's off the court. And a lot of that stems from his defensive deficiencies. Also, like, some of it is the way that he plays offensively. But this year, it's been really true. Like, they're just better when he's off the court over these last 8 games. And the biggest driving factor behind that is their defense went from an abomination, embarrassing, to like just bad. And that difference has made them look more competitive in a lot of these games. You look at the Nets' first 7 games before Cam got hurt, they had a 113 offensive rating. That was 21st. They had a 128.5 defensive rating, which was 30th. And that was 6 points lower than the 29th ranked team. So just, that's pretty insane. And then they had a -15.5 net rating, which was last in the league. And then you talk about their last 8 games since Cam got hurt and Noah Clowney moved into the starting lineup. They have a 111.4 offensive rating. So that's 1.4 points worse. So it's pretty much the same offensive rating with Cam and without Cam. And then the defensive rating went down to 119.8. So they're almost 9 points better in terms of defensive rating with Cam out of the lineup. And that's gone down to 24th in the league. And then the net rating, because of that, has gone down. Their net rating is 8.5 points better since Cam Thomas's injury. So they went from 30th in the league to 25th in the league since Cam Thomas's injury in net rating. And the biggest reason behind that, as I said, is the defensive improvement, because the offensive rating has pretty much stayed the same, but the defense has gotten dramatically better, 9 points better per 100 possessions. So I've said this about Cam Thomas. Like, I just think that He's obviously a really bad defender. I'm not a huge fan of the offensive approach in terms of the usage and, the ball not moving as much and other guys not getting involved. And we've seen early this season, Cam has barely made their offensive better in terms of the difference. It's a 1.4 point difference per 100 possessions. So basically the same. And the defense has gone up 9 points. So it's significantly better. And that has allowed the Nets to compete in a lot more of these games, whether you talk about that Magic game, whether you talk about the Wizards game or whatever else you want to say. And there's going to be games where they don't get over the hump at the end because they're lacking an on-ball creator like in that Boston game. So that's where Cam does help them. But overall, his defense in terms of, how much of a hindrance or a detriment he is on the defensive end, to me, that outweighs the offense. So I think that Noah Clowney coming into the starting lineup, he's played well, but I think that the Cam Thomas on-off is the biggest difference in how the Nets are playing as of late, and you're seeing most of that on the defensive end of the floor. As for Yegor and Terrence Mann versus Drake and Tyrese Martin, Tyrese is playing a little bit better than Yegor right now because Yegor's a rookie. In terms of which one of those pairings fit better together, they're both pretty bad. If you look at the net rating numbers for both of them, they're both significantly negative. I don't think that there's as much of a difference there. And we've only seen actually Yegor and Drake play 20 minutes together. So I would like to see them get a little bit more of a sample size. But last question before a break, how do you think the rotation will look once Cam Thomas and Haywood Highsmith return? And that's from Ricky White. And I've said this about the Cam Thomas thing. With his injury, with him being out for an extended period, probably not coming back for, another month and a half, 2 months with this hamstring injury, I don't really think it makes much sense for Cam Thomas to play for this team again, for Cam or for the Nets, because I've said it. He's just, when he's here, he's taking tons of on-ball reps away from the rookies. And if he's not a part of the Nets' future plans, which he doesn't seem to be based on how they handled everything this offseason and everything I've heard, why are you going to bring him back, have him take a ton more on-ball reps away from the rookies and other guys when he's not a part of the future? That doesn't make any sense from a developmental standpoint. So I personally think Cam Thomas may have played his last game with the Nets. I'd go as far as saying he has. We not sourced or anything, just my opinion. I did an episode about this with Brian Lewis last week, so you guys can go check that out. So that's how I'm seeing it with Cam. In terms of Haywood Highsmith, the whole idea with Haywood was they got him in that salary dump from the Miami Heat with a second-round pick alongside him. And the idea there was that the Nets were going to be able to flip him in a trade before the deadline if he played well. Because he has an expiring contract, he's only making around $6 million, so they could perceivably get another pick, like a second rounder or something for him. But Drake was dealing with the knee injury. He had surgery in August, and then he had swelling and a setback in his recovery. So the Nets said on October 19th that Haywood was going to be evaluated in 2 months. So that brings you up to December 14th. And then he probably needs time to ramp up from there. So let's say he's ready to get back on the court conservatively around New Year's or a little before. At that point, you only have a month left until the trade deadline at that point. So I think it's pretty unlikely that you're going to be able to flip him for any kind of an asset. So because of that, I'm not really sure how likely or how much it makes sense for Haywood to even play for the Nets this year. Whether that's a buyout, whether he just stays out and keeps recovering from his injury like we saw Bojan Bogdanovic do last season. I don't really see, the sense necessarily in bringing him back unless the Nets like him and they think that there's a chance that they could bring him back on a new deal as a veteran and they see him as a piece that they could do something with moving forward, which is plausible because he's only 28 years old. But still, with how crowded the Nets rotation is right now and 3 more rookies waiting in the wings who are in the G League and are going to need to get NBA minutes as the year progresses, you're also probably going to see Yegor Dioman and Drake Powell's minutes tick up as the year progresses. It just doesn't make much sense for Cam Thomas or Haywood Highsmith to come back into the rotation and take up more minutes. But if you're asking me if Cam Thomas and Haywood Highsmith do re-enter the rotation, what does it look like? I think you see Cam back in the starting lineup. I don't think that bringing Cam off the bench is a possibility for this Nets team. Just from Cam's perspective, I don't think that he's coming off the bench for one of the worst teams in the league during a contract season. I think that he would seek a trade before he would do that. So if Cam's back, I think he moves back into the starting unit. And Terrence Mann probably goes to the bench if I had to guess. I'm not sure the Nets want to bring Yegor from the bench into the starting lineup and then back to the bench. So say Terrence Mann goes to the bench and then Haywood Highsmith is probably a reserve in the second unit. And in that second unit, a guy like Jalen Wilson is probably cut out of the rotation first. We've already seen his minutes taper down now. And then guys like, Tyrese Martin and Zaire Williams could see their minutes cut. But that's not even accounting for the fact that you have rookies that need to get more minutes. You have 3 or perceivably going to be entering the rotation, 2 or 3 of them. And then you have Drake and Yegor, who you probably want to see get more minutes as the year progresses. So I just don't think that it makes that much sense for Cam or for Haywood to come back and take up those spots and take minutes away from all those guys. And I think that could impact the likelihood that we see either of them in the Nets rotation this season. But I got a lot more questions on this Fan Take Friday. Some about Sean Marks, some about the Nets rookies, some about Jordi Fernandez and how he's approaching the development of all these rookies. So we'll get into all that and more when I continue Locked On Nets after a quick break. Guys, let's talk about something every business owner knows too well: missed calls. When a customer tries to reach you and you can't get through, that's money slipping away. Quo, spelled Q-U-O, is a smarter way to run your business communications so you never miss an opportunity. Guys, Quo is the #1 business phone system built for 2025, not 1995. It's simple, modern, and designed to help you communicate faster, look more professional, and stay connected wherever you're working. Guys, I love that Quo works right from an app on your phone or computer. No extra devices, no clunky landlines. Your whole team can share one number and collaborate on calls and texts like a shared inbox, which means customers get help faster. And the built-in AI agent is a game changer. It logs your calls, writes summaries, and even sets up follow-ups automatically. So try Quo for free at quo.com/LockedOnNBA. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNBA. And yes, you can keep your existing number. Quo. No missed calls, no missed customers. The NBA season is heating up, and DoorDash has found the perfect way to keep fans in their bag all season long. Whether you're watching for the highlights, your fantasy team, or just your favorite player, DoorDash makes every game night even better. DoorDash is the official on-demand delivery platform of the NBA, and they're celebrating with something called the Bag Drop. Every time an NBA player scores 50 points in a game, DoorDash drops 50% off your order with Dash Pass the next day. And you're automatically entered for a chance to win the ultimate fan bag. We're talking player-inspired drip, exclusive gear, and stuff you'll actually want. DoorDash has you covered for late-night highlights, last-minute watch parties, and double OT fuel-ups. So next time someone goes off for 50, use promo code NBA50 the next day to get 50% off on DoorDash with Dash Pass, plus your shot at the bag drop. Dash Pass members only, 50% off up to $10 the day after a 50-point game with promo code. Terms apply. No purchase necessary. Ends April 13th. Open to U.S. residents 21 or older. Visit DoorDashInYourBag.com for full details. DoorDash, in your bag all season long. Coming back from the break, continuing today's Locked On Nets episode, this Fan Take Friday, rolling on through all of your takes and questions. Next one. Do you think it's fair to say that the rookie picks were Sean Marks picks and not selected by Jordi because of the lack of interest to play them extended minutes early this season? Maybe Jordi had his eye on other players who would have played more. That is from Tandy G 2001. And no, I mean, I think it's fair to say that they were definitely Sean Marks picks. He's the GM. That's his job. Do I think that means that Jordi doesn't like these players or he was not in on these selections? No. Everything that I've heard is that there was a ton of collaboration between Sean Marks and Jordi and the rest of the coaching staff during this pre-draft process. And I think that that's reflected, and you can see that in the way that they drafted, because the Nets had a clear theme of how they drafted this year. They took 4 players who I would say are very high feel, very pass first. And then we heard Sean Marks talk about that after the draft, and he said, 0.5 second basketball. The ball doesn't stick. It keeps moving. And not that that wasn't a priority for the Nets in prior drafts. I mean, it was just a completely different situation because they were trying to compete for titles in a lot of those drafts. But you've seen Jordi Fernandez come in, and then you see this very clear emphasis in the way that they draft, which is centered around a philosophy of how they want to play. And that philosophy is, a lot of the ways that we've seen Jordi want to play: getting into the lane, paint touches, getting the ball into rotation, a lot of three-point attempts, guys who can pass and keep the ball moving, playing in transition. We're not seeing that some stuff come to fruition right now because it's a lot of these guys' rookie seasons and they're just not ready yet, and the team is so bad as a whole. But there's a vision there, and that clear, shift, or not. I don't know if you can call it that much of a shift, but that clear of an emphasis on playing with a certain philosophy and drafting all of these guys, that is going to fit into the coach that you just hired, his philosophy and how he wants to play. So the idea that Jordi wasn't in on these draft picks or didn't want these guys, I think that that's just nonsensical. Could there be guys that he was higher on than other guys? Could there be some guys the Nets didn't draft who he wanted? Sure, because he's the coach and not the GM. But I do think that there was collaboration and synergy between Jordy Fernandez and the front office and how the Nets went about this draft and how they want to play moving forward. Next question, should the Nets pursue any big stars getting trade buzz this season, like AD, Ja, Trae Young, Lauri Markkanen, and Domantas Sabonis? They might not be available this summer when the Nets decide to switch to winning mode. That's from Andy Bankin. I don't see the Nets pursuing any stars in trades this season. This is a tanking season. And of the guys you mentioned, like if the Nets are trading for a star, they're looking for a younger guy, probably a guy who more fits their timeline. AD, no. John Morant, I have another question about him in a second that I'm going to answer, but I don't see that. Trae Young, I don't see that. The Nets just drafted all these point guards, and I don't think that they really want to center their team around a guy making a lot of money who had kind of defensive concerns that Trae does. Lauri Markkanen and Domantas Sabonis, same thing. Like, I just don't really see the Nets making a trade this season for a star. It doesn't make sense with where they're at. Next summer, it could get more interesting if they're looking to, expedite the timeline so much, given that they don't have their draft pick. But I don't see it this season. Next question. If the Nets somehow get a player like AJ DeBansta in this year's draft, do you expect us to speed up the rebuild? For example, if the Ja Morant situation gets ugly in Memphis, do you think the Nets can make a push for him? Ja Morant and AJ DeBansta is what the fans deserve. We need more fun hoops. And that is from Cam Thomas Lover. Do I think that the Nets could speed up the rebuild this summer if they get a player like AJ DeBansta in the draft? Absolutely. Like, the Nets don't have their pick in this 2027 draft, so they're not going to really have any incentive to tank or be bad next season. Does that mean that they need to expedite the timeline? No. Like, that, at the end of the day, that pick is a sunk cost. It's something that we've seen with the Nets in prior trades and how they've moved forward after. But if you're talking about this team, I would think that they're not going to want to gift another top pick to the Houston Rockets after all that they've gifted the Celtics, after all that they've gifted the Rockets with a third pick in the draft before last year in the 2024 draft. So I think they're going to try to get better. They've also been tanking for 2 seasons. They're going to want to get better. So yes, I think the Nets are going to make moves that are going to see them, expedite the timeline somewhat. Does that mean a star trade? No, it doesn't mean they could mean a star trade, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's like a guarantee. And then Ja Morant, I don't see the Nets being in on Ja Morant whatsoever. If I were the Nets, I would not be in on Ja Morant. I mean, you look at Ja just from like the off court and in the locker room standpoint, he does not seem like a Sean Marks guy whatsoever. I mean, I don't know if there's any GM who you could say he seems like this type of guy, but he really doesn't seem like a Sean Marks guy in terms of all the issues he's had off the court, all the issues that we're seeing in the locker room. And then just in terms of the on-court perspective, I mean, I know people are really excited about Ja because of the things that he's done in the past. He's like this really electric, tantalizing talent. But if you just look at the way things are trending for him right now, like, he's a guard who's extremely reliant on explosive athleticism, who has looked more, less athletic each year and is battling injuries each year. And then aside from that, he's a guard who is a really bad three-point shooter and also doesn't really defend at the point of attack. So that's not how I want to start, like, one of the highest paid guys on my team moving forward. A guard who is reliant on athleticism and battles injuries, a guard who doesn't shoot threes or defend really well at the point of attack or even decently. I wouldn't be in the Ja Morant market. I think there are other people who could be possibilities, but Ja, I just don't see it for the Nets. Next question. In the top of this year's draft, who do you think would be the dream fit in Jordy's hard-nosed coaching system and philosophy? AJ DeBansta, Cam Boozer, Caleb Wilson. I would say if you're talking about Jordy's, coaching strategy in terms of like effort or guys playing hard or anything like that, I think any of these guys could fit in. And if you're talking about from a basketball philosophy, I think a guy like Darren Peterson would be a dream. I think he'd be a dream for any of these teams because of the way that he can shoot, because of the ways that he can get downhill, be a shot creator, and the passing ability that he's shown early. But like any of these guys, whether you're talking about AJ DeBansta, Cam Boozer, Darren Peterson, Caleb Wilson, whoever you want to talk about, like, all of these guys are very high-level talents, and any of them can fit into the system. Like, you're going to fit the system around a lot of these guys, not the other way around. So if the Nets can come away with one of those guys at the top of the draft, that'll be a really good way for them to move forward in their rebuild. Next question. Is this team with a top 3 pick a play-in team next year, assuming without Cam Thomas? That's from Miami Watchmaker. It depends on what moves are made during the offseason. Like, if your question is this team right now, are they a play-in team if you just add a top 3 pick? Like, if you add Darren Peterson or AJ DeBansta or Cam Boozer, are they a play-in team? No, I don't think so. Because while those guys are extremely high-level prospects, they're still going to be rookies. And you can't expect them to, jump the team that much with this bad of a supporting cast around them. So, for the Nets to be a play-in team, if they add a top 3 pick, like that would come with making other moves this offseason, whether that be a trade for a star, whether that just be, bringing in some really good supporting pieces around that rookie, whether that be whatever. Like it's not just going to be that rookie comes in and just magically raises this team to a play-in team by himself. They're going to need to make other moves around the margins in order to do that. But we got some more questions that I'm going to close out this episode with. We got talks about the Nets 2027 first-round pick. We got some things on the Cam Johnson trade. We also have some things about the rookie. So I'll get into all that and more when I continue Locked On Nets after a quick break. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season, whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both. There's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, PrizePicks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere PrizePicks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Guys, when you use PrizePicks during both football Sundays and NBA tip-offs, it keeps every game exciting. You can pick your favorite players like Pat Mahomes or Steph Curry to see how your predictions play out. Their new stacks feature is a game changer. You can now pick more on Steph's points, threes, and assists in the same lineup. Plus, if one of your players leaves early with an injury, the injury reboot saves your lineup from a loss. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 off in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. Coming back from the break, closing out today's Locked On Nets episode on this Fan Take Friday. Rolling on through all your remaining takes and questions. Next one. How possible is it for the Nets to trade back for their 2027 first-round pick? And if so, what would a package look like? That's AFT Beta with the question. It's definitely possible for the Nets to trade back for their pick next year. I think it would probably take a pretty steep price because this team is really bad right now. And, that's going to be a good pick, presumably. Unless they make serious moves this offseason to improve the team, which they could. But I just don't see it being all that likely the Nets trade back for that pick because they would have to sacrifice assets to get that pick back, where you can put, assets into building the team and hope that that pick is just not a good pick. Like, that is the idea. Is it out of the question they could trade for it back? Definitely not. But I'm not sure from the Rockets' perspective that they would want to do that unless they were getting a really good package that I'm not sure the Nets want to give up. So you're kind of going in circles there. And you talk about the 2027 draft, like it's pretty early, but the rumblings are this 2026 draft is really, really highly regarded, especially at the top. That 2027 draft is viewed to be a down draft, like probably not as bad as the 2024 draft that we saw, which was historically bad, but it's not by drafts and scouts regarded as a very strong class. So for that reason, that might limit, how interested the Nets are in giving up assets to trade for that pick back, as opposed to using said assets to just make the team better. So that's what I'd say about that. Next question. Can we say the Cam Johnson trade is a win-win, or is it more of a win for the Nets? That's also from AFT Beta. I did an episode on this yesterday with Lucas Kaplan. I really focused more on the Nets, saying it was a win, and I think it could be a huge win for the Nets if MBJ keeps playing well and they can flip him for another kind of an asset. In terms of the Denver Nuggets side of it, it looks like more of a win for the Nets right now because Michael Porter Jr. is playing well, and they got that unprotected 2032 Nuggets pick, which was very highly regarded in terms of assets that were available on the market. But I don't think you can say it's like a loss for the Nuggets yet. It's very early. Yes, Cam Johnson has struggled. He hasn't played that well, but he's had a few better games over the last 2 for Denver. He had a really clutch shot in one of their recent wins. So, it's a long season. We're going to have to see how it progresses. I'm sure that Cam Johnson's going to get in a groove there and start to improve. He's not going to play this bad or shoot this poorly the whole season. But, you also could look at it from the Nuggets' perspective of it wasn't just Cam Johnson. They also, by shedding MPJ's salary and bringing in Cam Johnson and shedding the difference between them, which was around like $15 million, that opened up financial flexibility for them to fill out their bench. And they do look like a good team at the beginning of the season. So right now, I'd say it's to be determined for Denver. Definitely has potential to be a win. And for the Nets, I'd say it's definitely a win. So that's how I'm looking at that. Next question. Why not play the rookies up in the NBA if you're tanking? It accomplishes more with experience, and you can naturally tank while looking ahead to the future. Is Long Island even that helpful? And that's from Devin JAD. I would say that the reason the Nets are playing some of these guys in Long Island, like Ben Surratt, Nolan Troy, Danny Wolf, is because they kind of need to. Like, they're not NBA ready yet. I think Wolf's the guy that you can have the biggest argument about because he's 21 years old and he does have some skills that could translate to the NBA level. But even him, like defensively, he's struggling in Long Island. I think the Nets also want to get a look at him playing power forward and center to determine what they want him to be in the NBA. But also Nolan Troy and Ben Saraf, like Ben came in, he really struggled. Do I think that you needed to send him down to the G League? No, I think that's a little, that was a little dramatic after him starting 5 games and then going to the G League, but he's definitely going to benefit from G League reps, as is Nolan Drore. Like, is Long Island that helpful? Like, yeah, I think Long Island is helpful. Like, we've seen the Nets use Long Island to develop other players. It's been mostly big men like, Nick Claxton, like Day'Ron Sharpe, whoever, Noah Clowney also spent a full season down there almost. So I think it's helpful, but I also think that you'll see these guys start to get NBA minutes as the season progresses. Jordy Fernandez said it. The goal is 60 games between the NBA and the G League. Like, that's a goal for the Nets. I think you're going to see guys like Nolan, Danny, and Ben play, a bunch of games in Long Island early this season. In the second half of the year, I'd expect them to come back to the Nets and get up to that 60-game mark that Jordy was referring to. Last couple questions. How in NYC can you have a silent GM, and who even owns this team? The fans deserve a plan while paying NYC prices. Mike Wilson with the question there. And the Nets don't have a silent GM. I mean, Sean Marks talks multiple times every season. He talks before the season. He talks during the season at the trade deadline. Usually he talks after the season. So this seems like more of a Knicks question where you talk about Leon Rose. I'm not sure if maybe you submitted this under the wrong thread, but yeah, like Sean Marks talks. Joe Tsai owns the team. When Sean Marks has talked in recent press conferences, I think he's been a little bit more transparent about how he's thinking and the thought process of this team. So yeah, I mean, Sean Marks talks, the Nets don't have a silent GM. So that's what I'd say with that. But I think the fans do deserve a plan. And I think that the Nets kind of signaled what that plan is with them making 5 first-round picks in this draft, with them going towards a youth movement, with them committing to a tank. It's a build through the draft. It's an organic build process and plan for the first time in a really long time. So that is the plan right now. Last question. What do you have access to within the team? You talk about dealing with the locker room. Are you in there? That's also from Tanny G 2001. Yeah, I have access to the team. I have access in the pregame. We do pregame press conferences. I'm in the locker room before and after the games. I have access to practices, a lot of different things. So yes, I'm in the locker room. I get to talk to the players before and after the game. I get to talk to Jordy Fernandez. Sometimes, as I just said, you get to talk to Sean Marks. So I have access to the Nets throughout the whole season. It's not different whether you're home or away. So that's, how I go about the job, and that's what I'm able to do. And it's really nice to have access and get to ask all these questions and give you guys these responses in my writing and on the podcast. But that's all the questions I have today. Thank you to everyone who continues to participate and support and let me do these mailbag episodes. But if you guys do not already, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Nets on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, whether Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you enjoy the content, take a second, smash that like button, leave a comment, leave a 5-star review. Anything you could do to engage is much appreciated. We got another Nets game against the Boston Celtics on Friday night, and then they're coming back for another exciting slate of games next week. So I'll have coverage of all that and more when I'm back on Monday talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.